Right, so Keir Starmer's relationship with Israel has become a graver cause for concern since the events of October 7th broke out. We already knew he was a Zionist without qualification, his own words, and of course he has opposed a ceasefire there, a meaningful one certainly. Firstly, in wanting just humanitarian pauses, and then coming out in support of a ceasefire, though not when and not for how long either. But that entire episode seemed to be more along the lines of an intention to scupper an SNP ceasefire motion, which called for one that was immediate and permanent, and more worrying than anything else, appeared to be coming after he had said he had spoken to the President of Israel, Isaac Herzog, the kind of guy who signs bombs before they get dropped on Gaza, who faces criminal charges in Switzerland, we still know nothing of the details of, and who said on video that every Gazan is guilty of being party to Hamas, which then half the population are under 18, is disgusting and as such formed part of the case South Africa brought against Israel back in January. But now, video has emerged of Starmer addressing Labour friends of Israel, extolling their virtues and discussing Labour parliamentary candidates being sent to Israel, seemingly for instruction. So just how deep in hock to Israel is Starmer's regime, and how disturbed should we be by this? Right, so a video has emerged of Keir Starmer addressing Labour Friends of Israel conference, extolling the virtues, as he sees it, of the group, and giving further insight to suspicions that this guy's loyalty to the apartheid regime committing genocide in Gaza is pretty much unshakable. So take a look at this.
I look forward to visiting Israel with LFI as soon as possible. It's a top priority for me to visit, to listen, and to understand. I'm committed to doing all I can to continue rebuilding the important bond with our friends in Israel. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all at the LFI annual lunch in November. I'm honoured to be invited. Thank you again to Steve and everyone in the LFI for the crucial role you play in our party. Enjoy your evening.
It's very important for LFI to bring parliamentary candidates here to Israel to see for themselves the complexity of the situation.
I'm going to be taking a lot of this back with me to London. The stories that I've been told, the people that I've met.
Anyone who goes to Israel with an LFI visit will find themselves meeting a wide variety of Israeli voices and opinions.
I want to pay tribute to the hard work of LFI. You are an invaluable source of energy and ideas for me and my team. I'm delighted to be able to send this message, to send my support to Labour Friends of Israel, and to thank you for the important work that you do.
Now, despite loyalists to Starmer and to Labour making claims that this is some kind of deep fake, it isn't. That clip is actually taken from a longer video which Starmer sent to address Labour Friends of Israel's conference back in 2021. So it isn't recent, but is certainly within Starmer's leadership period. But also does go to show that his attitude towards a group who heavily influence Labour policy, regularly have affiliated MPs platformed on media shows and in the papers, enjoy paid-for jollies to Israel and are heavily lobbied by them. Many of their donors come from affiliated and supported bodies too, and there very much does appear to be a culture of being looked after if your interests align with those of Israel. This was also dramatically exposed by the activities of such MPs and Israel loyalists in the party during Corbyn's tenure in charge. Anti-Semitism ended up being weaponised against him, in no small part, many believe, because of Corbyn's long-standing support for the oppressed Palestinian people who have lived under apartheid and Israeli occupation for decades. He was damned for that leading up to the 2019 general election, but as has so often been the case, his views have been borne out to be true. He'd been proven right again. It's just taken a genocide happening before our eyes for a lot of people to snap out of it and realise he was actually right. Now, of course, this video footage relates to events in 2021, well before many people were getting their eyes open to Israeli atrocity, shall we say. But of course, it was going on then too, and had been for a long time. Starmer's loyalists to Israel had already been established. That was laid out when his leadership campaign funding, which he refused to release during the campaign period, despite his rivals having done so themselves, as they turned out to be heavily from the Israel lobby. The Israel lobby heavily funded his leadership campaign. He was clearly their man, and his loyalty to that, and certainly has never been called into question, unlike literally everything else he has said and done. Every policy announcement he's ever done, every word he's ever gone back on, over everything. His loyalty to Israel, we cannot say that about. But despite his promises to us and to the country being shown over and over to be utterly worthless, his loyalties to Israel have been unshakable. LFI play a crucial role in Starmer's Labour, he said. He personally thanked a chap called Steve there. Did you notice that bit? I presume this to be reference to the parliamentary chair of LFI since 2020, the MP for Birmingham Selly Oak, Steve McCabe, a chap who isn't a household name necessarily, but probably should be, and for all manner of wrong reasons. In relation to the events since October 7th, for example, he duly abstained last November on that ceasefire vote. In the October, just before that, but just weeks into the genocide in Gaza, he wrote that ending the ceasefire at that point would be a recipe for an endless war, which tells me he really needs to look up the definition of ceasefire in the dictionary, because he clearly doesn't understand the meaning of it. It's just the most insane thing to say, is it not? Due to his low public profile, it's largely gone unreported, but he's been subject to significant protests, as many more well-known Labour MPs have been, outside constituency offices, outside surgeries, because of the things he said on Israel and Gaza, and because of his position within Labour Friends of Israel. And it's not like they've all been about demanding he back a ceasefire either, because he has apparently refused to engage with constituents on those matters and listen to their concerns. So much so that some of these protests have actually been calls for him to resign if he refuses to just engage effectively with the people that he's meant to represent. That's another one whose loyalties appear to be more to Israel than those he was elected to represent. Certainly how it comes across. Sounds like it, doesn't it? Back to the Starmer video clip, though. It moved on to a montage, did it not, of LFI talking about the importance of bringing parliamentary candidates to Israel. We heard from Dan Tomlinson as one, for instance, the prospective candidate for Chipping Barnet, saying how much of what he'd learned he'd be taking back with him. We heard from Pat McFadden, the Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, talking about the importance of Israel in the Labour Party, in his position as a vice chair of LFI. And it reminds me of a more recent news story concerning Starmer streamlining his cabinet into a completely undemocratic quad, consisting of everything being run by 4 Labour figures in the form of Starmer himself, Rachel Reeves, Angela Rayner and McFadden. With both McFadden and Reeves being in LFI, Starmer's Israel loyalty is well attested to, and Rayner, far more widely regarded now as a sellout, a specific target seat named by George Galloway no less. And I'll never forget how during the purges, when they were really ramping up, when the attacks on Labour members were really at their height, she said she'd expel thousands to rid the party of anti-Semitism, partaking completely in the scam that became exposed as. It's a very, very pro-Israel lineup, in my view, that would be running government, should they be elected. And of course it ended with an endorsement of the video by Starmer at the end there. Complete endorsement. So the work of LFI, everything they said in that video to take parliamentary candidates to Israel, that's being done with his blessing then. Their work is so important, he said, including doing that, is it? Sending them to Israel for instruction before ever being elected. And with all this talk right now of extremism and how that is getting weighted disproportionately against Muslims coming from Michael Gove, another self-declared Zionist, should we not see this as a form of radicalisation too? But these would be the people that would end up representing us if we voted Labour. Extremism being weighted against Muslims, as that would be, that's the end result, that's where it's heading, isn't it? Muslim representative bodies being lined up to be declared extremist under the definition of the new term, as Gove is saying, all at the time when Israel are being seen to be committing genocide against a majority Muslim population in Gaza. So is sending people to be educated by Israel, of all entities, not clearly a form of radicalisation too, and would be disproportionately anti-Muslim while they're at it? A form that is acceptable, a form of radicalisation that would be acceptable to those redrawing the definition of extremism because they are already on the side of Israel. This is really troubling, it's bothersome. Not only are we already having to deal with an overtly Israel-centric Labour Party with an ardently Zionist and authoritarian leader, praising that continuing and even increasing. The only thing we don't know here is if this is LFI Israel training and education is actually mandatory. Though with the authoritarianism of candidate selection going on within the Labour Party, for all we know, it is now a requirement for anyone hoping to be successful and be selected. Goodness knows, if you aren't Starmery enough, you aren't going to get picked. Certainly Starmer's got rid of enough sitting MPs that they can't stand again going forwards, disproportionately lefties. And with the interference at local selection level I've covered in numerous other videos in the past as well, with decent candidates overlooked because they're left-wing, who's to say your opinion of Israel doesn't count now as well? When so many of us are appalled at what Israel is doing right now in Gaza, how much more difficult could it be under the iron fist style of leadership Starmer has become synonymous with? Would it be for all of us to speak out against them, with him in charge of the country, with him making the laws? The cheers that change is coming are going to be, I fear, very, very short-lived, and people will rapidly realise what a mistake they made voting Labour, because you don't have to vote for them to get the Tories out. You'd only be voting more Tories in my view, anyway. But there are other options. But don't just take my word for that. Take the word of the latest leading left-wing Labour figure to ditch the party, unable to continue to be associated with it as it is being run. As former Labour MP Laura Smith, now a local councillor, one of the lefties who truly stuck it out, and somebody who has been surrounded by the Labour Party all her life, and the ethos that the Labour Party should stand for, has been able to take no more of Starmer's lead, and what has become of Labour under him, even at local level, which you can find out all about in this video recommendation here, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.